Welcome back. Day 2, hour 3. And joining James and I today is Brock Holowachuk. Brock, welcome.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be back here seeing familiar faces face to face in person. It feels like it's been a very long time.
It is. Now, why don't you tell us what you do? Because you and I kind of work closely together on something.
We do. I'm here as a member of the board of directors and currently the president for DRI Canada, which we know ourselves through the Certification Commission, where along with other volunteers, we work to not only review the certification applications from people who are advancing through their career and their profession and using DRI certification to do that, but kind of in a bigger way, advance the profession by sort of raising the bar and raising the standard and maintaining something about certification that other people can really look at and understand that it means something. So I should add, I probably don't do it enough, is to thank you for your time as a volunteer. As a not-for-profit, we depend upon that. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So yeah, Brock, for some of our audience who's not certified or doesn't have DRI certification, you talk about raising the bar for the profession. Maybe elaborate on why that's important to you and to DRI Canada.
I say this having volunteered with DRI Canada for at this point over 10 years, and we provide training as a not-for-profit. We run an awards program as a not-for-profit. I have to say this with a great deal of care because it's like the conversation where your kids ask, who do you love the most? But I'll make an argument that perhaps the most important thing we do is certification. Because DRI Canada and DRI International certification, and remembering that we're an affiliate of DRI International, is what sets us apart, and what I feel is really important about both preserving and building is that somebody who has DRI Canada certification has shown to their peers that they have done and they can demonstrate having done this work. And so the question then is, what does that mean to our profession? How does maintaining the value and the quality of certification mean something to our profession? And I think an awfully big part of that has to do with the fact that we are unregulated. We are unlike lawyers, where if I were to turn on your mics and say, I'm a lawyer, I'd get in legal problems for that. Because you have to.
It would make for some great ratings.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And some awful advice. Yeah, that's right. We're going to test the limits of your liability coverage today. But there's something defined when you say, I am a lawyer, I am a physician, I am an engineer, and we don't operate in that space. We operate in a space where, for better or for worse, at this point in time, anybody can put up their hand and say, I'm a continuity professional. And there is, in my view, a risk to our profession as a result of people operating in a way that leads to bad advice and leads to bad plans and leads organizations to places where, they are in fact set up to fail. Having a certified professional, having a DRI Canada certified professional is not a guarantee of anything about what you're going to get from that person. But I think it's important for the credibility of our profession and the quality of the work we do that there are people who can go out and when others turn to them for advice, they can look at the letters and say, this tells me that that person has done certain things, that they've demonstrated certain things. And to me, that's really important because there's a public safety, there's a value to our work that has to do with public safety. When people develop bad or poorly informed or ineffective continuity management programs and plans, it has really serious consequences. We are not quite in the category of a surgeon, which is part of the reason why we're not certified as, or pardon me, licensed as a professional. But people lose money, people lose jobs, critical services aren't delivered when continuity management isn't done well. So to me, and it's a very long answer, I apologize. To me, part of what we do when we maintain and build the level of certification is it sort of elevates the whole field of practice. This is not to say that somebody without certification can't do the job well, and there are plenty of people who do. But it should, and something is gained when people can look at certification and say, okay, that means something, and that's what we're trying to do.
Let me ask a follow-up question there, if you don't mind, because you brought up licensing. There are certain industries, I'm thinking of like financial services, where those are not life or death, surgeon, first responder decisions, but those are licenses issued by governments. What are your thoughts? Do you see, as more regulations are going to come out across the world post-COVID, do you see an era where we could end up as a licensed profession?
Interesting.
Yeah, I think
hadn't thought of that.
I think that's probable. Let me put that differently. I think it's probable there's going to be a discussion on that, and I think that we should welcome it. I want to jump back and like both to a point you made, but I'd made initially about what we do is important, but it's we're not surgeons, and I think that there's a very old, and I think I think for the most part people don't think about continuity management like they did when I started 20 some years ago, which is something I hate to say. But when I started with it, and I came to it from lights and sirens, civil disaster management.
Okay.
People at that point in time thought about continuity management as the plan that you have so your organization doesn't lose money. It had a very commercial point of view.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah,
I think in large part because of its ITDR roots.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think people have moved off of that. And if COVID didn't move them off of it, then I don't know what will. So, it's my point is not to underplay the consequence and the gravity of doing this work well, nor to overplay it. But we saw in COVID that continuity management done properly has public safety effects.
Absolutely.
And like we could spend a lot of time talking about examples of that. But the continuity plan that keeps people employed, the continuity plan that keeps trucks rolling, the continuity plan that plans, I shouldn't say it's just one thing, the planning that leads to Tylenol, children's Tylenol on the shelves, obviously go far, far beyond commerce.
Correct.
And I think, I really think that there's certainly over the last 2 decades a change in that recognition. I think coming out of COVID, there's so many vivid illustrations of that, and I think that recognition kind of naturally, inevitably, and properly leads people to start to say, well, maybe there is a reason to take a look at saying you can't call yourself a continuity management professional unless, and does it put us in the same category as a nurse? I think it's very tempting to say, no, we are not in the same category of nurse as a nurse. And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite a cut and dried matter. But I think that there's probably a closer case and at least the start of a really interesting discussion about whether that's one of the directions we go next.
Yeah. The reason I thought of the analogy of financial advisors, investment advisors, is that's not a public safety issue, but it's a matter of public trust.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, I think a lot of what we do in our profession goes back and is tied to public trust.
I agree. And and I'll add to that. And I say add to it to sincerely not take away anything from your point, which I agree with entirely. There's why if we look at it and say, okay, part of the reason why financial professionals are certified is because we need to establish for them that they have a fiduciary responsibility. And part of the reason we need to have them at a certain professional level is because if you get bad financial advice, that's going to lead to real world consequences, like, and to not open up a can of worms, people who got bad advice on things like crypto.
Yeah.
Those things have real life, real world consequences. And if we sort of imagine a continuum, where at one end of that spectrum and regulated professions, you say, well, obviously a doctor, obviously lawyers, and things that have to do with life safety, we're going to, for public policy and public security and confidence reasons, we're going to clearly and comfortably put on that side of it. And, then you sort of slide further down it and you say, well, and I say this to sincerely not take anything away from people on the other end of that continuum, it's a slightly different case when you are, as is the case in Manitoba where I'm from, you need to be licensed as a physiotherapist. There's a public safety reason for that. There's a public confidence reason for that. I think, continuity management as a field has a really interesting and necessary discussion to have about, like, do we fall somewhere within that space? And I would argue that, like, more toward the side of, like, financial professions, less toward the side of health professions, there's probably a space that we need to be considering.
We talked with Chloe earlier on today, and she was talking about some of the things DRI International is addressing, updating professional practices, and some of the things where she would like the organization to go. As the acting president of DRI Canada, where do you want DRIC to go? And this is an interest of me being a certification commissioner too.
I'll qualify it by saying I'm one voice on the board of directors. And it's timely you ask the question because tomorrow and the following day, board of directors is going to meet, and we're going to be going through the next iteration of our strategic plan. So we're going to be asking questions of ourselves about what it is that we're going to work on and advance as an organization for the benefit of really two perspectives. First, certified professionals who we represent, but also in a broader sense, the public interest. And I think those two things are compatible. I don't think they're exclusive of each other. So to do that, rather than just me saying, well, this is what I think, this is what, like, as somebody who does the work, as a lay citizen, this is what I think is important. We're going to inform our discussions by some work that we've engaged through a contractor who works in strategic planning, and some engagement we did with our certified professionals earlier in the summer, where we asked them, you as a professional and a member of DRI Canada, what you think our priorities ought to be. Because when we're thinking about our priorities and our investments for the next 5 years, it's important that we think about that, not just to be deliberate, but to make sure we're making responsible, smart decisions about your money and your stake in the organization. So the first point is that we're going to be a little bit more informed than me saying, this is my feeling. But this is my feeling. I think that the direction that the first thing we need to look at is what our members have told us as being really relevant for them, and it can help them in their work. And one of the things that you've told us, not you personally, members, or maybe you did.
Maybe I did.
Is the interest in the need for more communications, and we're gonna. I think that's safe to say we're going to do that. And to not imply we've solved the problem, we've taken, I think, a big step in that direction with True North Resilience magazine. Which, if you're here in Toronto today, you can pick up a copy at our table. If you're not here at Continuity and Resilience today or DEMCON, we'll be sending one out to you.
Oh, good.
Yep.
I knew that was launching. That only just launched, didn't it? Yesterday or today?
Today, or pardon me, yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
We're going to grab a copy at the next break then.
Yep.
So we'll have
Yeah.
to put an article in there. We'll have to write an
I would
article
love
in
to.
there.
100%. And you're not the only people who've said that. And I couldn't be happier. I'll pause. And as much as Garth Tucker, who's sitting over here, would say it's a team effort, the biggest part of that team was Garth Tucker on our board of directors, who saw a need and had a vision and led the work. And yes, a team effort, and his work really stood out in it. The thing that, like, so that's a good step. But the thing that I think is really notable about that is the number of people who said what you said and what you said. Can I write something? Can I contribute something? And I think what that leads to then for me as the second point I really want to get to is finding ways to engage members. And, but as a first point, providing things that are relevant to people in their practice. As a second thing, finding ways to engage members. The third thing, and I could make a longer list, but I'll keep it to 3. The third thing is, I think, really finding ways to help people advance from ABCP, associate, the associate level, to CFCP or CBCP. And I think that's a really important thing to go back to the start, because it elevates our professions when we can get people to that level. More importantly, people have said that there's the need. They want things to help them progress professionally. And as great as certification, and certification is important because, and I'll labor the point, I apologize. Certification is important because it means something. Certification is also important because it's a roadmap for professional development. And when I guess, that's another way to make the point that there's a public interest that's served, and there's also an interest on the part of our certified professionals. So I think that there's some don't have all the answers, and for me, there's some really important work that we can do about not just maintaining the level of certification and advancing it, but getting more people into the process. I'd really like to work on that.
Well, that's something I think we're going to be talking about later anyway, is getting new people into the profession and how to collaborate with them, and then getting the certification for them so that as they come in, they can grow and get better in their profession, and mentoring and different ideas that they have.
There's that, I agree with you, and there's a big component of that. There's also a component of our certified professionals at ABCP who I objectively feel like we've underserved. And those are the people who, and like, there's nobody as I look out in the crowd today who comes to mind immediately, and I'll not name names, but I've known some people who are at ABCP and are exemplary professionals who I've worked with and do the job as well as anybody. And they've stayed at ABCP for a long time. Really, it's only a matter of them saying, here's the certification application. They'd hit it out of the park. There's the new professionals. I agree with you. I think that there's also a group of existing ABCPs who are all kinds of qualified. And we need to take a look at, and a better look, and do a better job of figuring out what it is that we can do to get them into the process. Noting that there's some people who say that's good enough. Like, and I've asked some people who have been ABCP for like 15 years and I've worked with, and they're pros, and they say, and I say, so why have you not put in? And they've said, well, like it's not required for my job, or other reasons. There are some people who will say it's just not something that I need. But I think that there are other people who we kind of have to look at what some of the impediments are, and find a way to support them better.
Any final thoughts? Any comments? Because I know you have a presentation.
Hi,
soon.
Brock, you've been up since 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right. Thank you for joining us. Did you get any sleep last night?
I had about 2.5 hours of sleep, and I set my alarm to go off at 2 a.m. in Winnipeg. Well, I live just outside of Winnipeg, so I could get to the airport, then get on a plane and get here today. And the hardest part, as great as it is to be here, and it's, I was looking forward to it. I didn't realize how much I missed this kind of setting and how much I missed face-to-face with people until I actually got here.
Yeah.
Like I'm regretting that it didn't work out for me to come yesterday, even more than I was regretting it. So it's great to be here. The only part, the hardest part, is that my little dog is back home, and about half an hour before my alarm went off, he's on the bed. He's like a 13-pound dog,
Okay.
and it was, oh, we got a COVID dog. We got a COVID dog, and it's like, oh, he's not allowed on the bed. Well, he's on the bed.
He's on the
So at about 1:30, he kind of pushed into me. I said, now I really don't want to go. Alas, I'm really glad to be here.
I think you're being told you have to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Brock.
Oh, thank
Actually, this
you.
is the first time we're meeting face
Face
to
to face.
face.
Yep. Another
And-
example of that.
Yeah, and I'm into my 4th year of being a certification commissioner.
Well, this has happened with a few of our commissions where we've had people who, and like this is, part of what we need to bear in mind as a board of directors as we take our strategic direction. The nature of our work has changed, made more prominent. But I think there's also something about, in particular, continuity management and going back to the point about what support we can provide, asking questions about how we can do events like this, which I couldn't be happier to be here. But what it is that professionals working want to see, and rather than necessarily saying come to us, how can we come to you? And it's an encouraging thing for me, not just yourself as a volunteer with one of the commissions, but all of the volunteers on the board of directors. It's one of the best things I do to have the chance to work with volunteers who not only understand, but back up their belief that we are best served by a not-for-profit working in this space. And back that up not only with their time but their work. And I'll add, a final point about how fortunate we are to have Chloe and Chloe Demirovsky and Al Berman and everybody at DRI International backing us up in the same kind of way. But what it positions us to do, I think, is some really interesting and exciting and useful things over the next few years.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I know you've got a session later.
Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate it.
And Renzo was here.
Nice seeing
You as well.
I know Renzo was standing here, and I'm sure he was probably saying,
One of
"Come
Brock's
on."
handlers.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Probably one of
So
your
we'll let you
handlers.
get ready for your session. Hopefully, the next time we speak to you, you don't have to wake up at 2.
Let's make that the goal.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate the time, though. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brock.
All
It's
right.
good to actually meet you finally
Yes, you
face to
too.
face.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
James is gonna
Okay.
give you some room there. There we go. Take care.
If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.